Live from the 22 News Broadcast Center, your local election headquarters. This is a Greenfield mayoral debate. And now, here's Rich Teddemer.
Good afternoon and welcome to a special Your Election Headquarters presentation right here on 22 News. I'm Rich Teddemer, and today we're hosting a debate among the candidates running for mayor of Greenfield. And joining us in the studios are City Councilor Sheila Gilmour, also the City Councilor that is Brickett Allis, and then there is Board Chair Roxann Wedegartner. I'm trying to put them in the order that they're sitting here right now. That's Sheila, Brickett, and Roxann, who are joining us today. Brickett is running a write-in campaign, so the other two are on the ballot. And we'll begin with opening statements, and by virtue of a drawing, Brickett Allis, you'll go first.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate that. So I was born and raised in Greenfield, educated there as well. By virtue of my almost 20 years service on the City Council, I have gained the relevant experience and knowledge needed to run the city of Greenfield. I chose to get into the race so that we could go back to and get back to focusing on what the needs of Greenfield are. We have many very, very pressing and long-term needs, such as water and sewer infrastructure, making sure, that we fund all of our union contracts properly and take care of our employees, and also that we can bolster our public safety. Specifically, one of my plans would be to bolster the EMS service that we have in Greenfield. So I am hoping that I can count on voters to write my name in on the ballot on November 5th, and I would ask for your support and your vote.
Roxann, your opening statement, please.
Yes, thank you, Rich, and thank you for having us all here. When I entered this race, I said, and have been saying all along through this campaign, that I am running for mayor because I want to see Greenfield keep moving forward and making progress. And how we'll do that is we'll capitalize on our strengths and we'll focus on our assets, and that is our extraordinary publicly owned, very fast broadband service that can be used to attract businesses, our relative affordability, both in real estate, in commercial and housing real estate, and our location at Route 2 and 91, and our access to resources of the higher education institutions that we have around. My experience, 22 years of experience in municipal government, extends to being on school committee for 6 years as chair, and also chairing the planning board of the city of Greenfield for 14 of the 16 years I was there. I believe that distinguishes me from the candidates here.
And that's time for your opening statement. Thank you, Roxann. Sheila Gilmour, your opening statement, please.
Yes, so I'm running for mayor because I believe that Greenfield is ready for a change in leadership. I think that we have made a lot of progress since the recession, but we're at a turning point now, and it's time for someone new to be at the helm. So I came to Greenfield later in life. I started off as a teen mom, and I later joined the military. Got to travel. I spent 8 years in the military as a Russian linguist and intelligence analyst. Then I moved on to compliance management, where I managed programs for my commander and made sure that we were ready for the Inspector General when they came around. Later, I worked on my graduate degree at UMass Amherst in public policy and started volunteering with my union and got involved in town politics.
Okay, so that's the opening statement, and now it's time for the question and answers of this debate. I'll ask the question. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond, and by virtue of the drawing, Sheila Gilmour will go first. And I just want to let you know we're having a little difficulty with our lights here, so you'll see yellow and then red, but sometimes you might not see yellow. So just be prepared. Yeah, that's right. You did not get a yellow, Roxann. You're right about that. So we'll try to work on that as we move along here. All right, so we'll start off with Sheila. The Safe City Ordinance has been a major issue of contention in Greenfield for over the past year. What is your stance on the Safe City Ordinance, and will you be voting in favor of it on November 5th?
Yes, I will be voting in favor of it. I voted in favor when it came up to the City Council a couple of months ago. And I think that this is, one thing that I think is getting lost in this debate is Greenfield already is a safe city by virtue of executive order. This codifies the Safe City Ordinance and makes it law. It also extends it beyond our police department to other city employees. So to have it on the ballot, I wonder what it accomplishes anyways, because if it's voted down, we still have that executive order standing.
Brickett, your feeling on that?
Thanks, Rich. So yeah, as I voted on the council, I voted against the Safe City Ordinance for many reasons that I stated on the council floor. However, specifically, I believe that the Safe City Ordinance is an ordinance that all it does is draw attention to the city. And I believe that we shouldn't be drawing attention to the city because we can't stop ICE from doing what they're going to do. Whether you agree with the policies or not at the federal level, Greenfield hasn't, doesn't, and will continue not to be part of ICE raids. And I believe that if you draw attention to the issue of immigration in the current national political arena, you are just opening yourself up to making people feel safe when they're really ultimately not safe because you're drawing the attention to the issue. So in your specific question, I typically don't talk about how I vote in the voting booth. However, since I'm on the council and I have made that vote, I will vote the same way I did on the council, which is to vote against it.
Okay, Roxann, your stance on the Safe City Ordinance?
I'm on record as supporting the Safe City Ordinance, and I will be voting yes on it. It does codify what's been in existence for 2 years. Safe cities have been supported by the Massachusetts Police Association, and I unlike Councilor Allis, believe that it actually does make us a safer city because it allows immigrants and people who have been here from other countries to be able to call the police when they want to. They don't have to be afraid to call the police. It also doesn't make ICE officers out of our police department. Our police department has plenty to do in Greenfield. We don't need to be doing the federal government's work.
Okay, here comes the next question, and Brickett, you go first. On Election Day, Greenfield voters will also be deciding on whether to approve the building of a new public library. Do you support the library project?
This particular project, I do not support based on the numbers that we have. Do I support the library? Absolutely, 100% support the library. I also 100% support building a more reasonably sized library at a more reasonable cost. $21 million for a library with a grant of $9.4 million still leaves the city with the rest of the money to pay. Whether there's fundraising or not to generate any of that money to pay for the library, it's still a significant amount of money, and I believe we could build a more reasonably sized library in our community for less money than we would have to pay if we accept this grant and do this particular project. Because the other part of this is we have to tear down the firehouse to build the library, and we don't have solid plans at all about what we're going to do with the firehouse, which I believe all three of us agree we definitely need the firehouse. But we need the plans, and we need a planning phase to be able to make sure we know where they will go into a firehouse that is the right size that the city needs.
Roxann, do you support the library project?
I certainly do support the library. The library has the plans, or the plan to get a new library, has been on the books for quite some time, as has the fire station. They've almost been on a glide path together. The numbers that we have are the numbers that are appropriate for the size that we have, that we're growing, that we're going to build, rather. And so I'm perfectly comfortable with it. We know that we can bond out, put it on our debt schedule, both projects, because we're retiring debt. And that is, that's the way we get our municipal big projects done. The city of Greenfield is getting a grant for $9.4 million. It's half of the cost of it. There's additional money coming from contributions, and we'll be funding the rest. It's a bargain. It's a real deal.
Sheila, do you support the library project?
Yes, I voted in favor of it when it came up when we voted on it. It felt like years ago. I think one thing that people fail to recognize is that we can't do nothing. And it's sort of like when you have an old car that just has to keep going back to the mechanic, and you feel like, well, I don't want to take on a car payment, but you spend so much money at the mechanic that eventually it just makes sense. You just have to start over. If we make the upgrades that we need to make our library safe and accessible for everybody, it's going to cost nearly the same amount. But then we're going to have maintenance on a building that's over 100 years old, and it's a house. It's not a library. If we have a new building that is built to be a library, a modern building, brand new construction, we won't have to worry about as many maintenance costs going down the road.
Okay, Roxann, you get the next question first.
Okay.
Greenfield has recently been accepted into a new state program that helps businesses looking to develop vacant storefronts. What kind of economic development would you like to see in the downtown area, and how would you go about attracting this type of development as mayor?
Well, what I'd like to do is focus on what we know is working there. So we can focus on the types of businesses that we know are working there, entertainment, experiences, services, and some more unique retail. I believe we can promote the city of Greenfield at large through a well thought out marketing plan. But we can attract the types of businesses that we want to the downtown by working together with our landlords. And there's some property changing hands. Some new landlords are coming in with new and different ideas. And I believe that developing a focus on filling those downtown stores with what we know is working there, whether it's entertainment, restaurants, some types of retail. We've got a downtown, which is something a lot of cities in America don't have, small cities. So it's time for us to invest in it.
Sheila, what kind of economic development do you like for downtown?
I'd like to see a variety of economic development because you can't just put all your eggs into one basket. I think that that's part of the problem that we had after, a lot of these factories started moving to Southeast Asia. We saw massive layoffs, and there were people that never really recovered from that. And I think that that's something that happened with my family when I was very young. My father was always in manufacturing. So if we hang, if we put all of our eggs in that one basket, then we're going to have the same problem in Greenfield. So I want to see businesses that are going to be resilient in the face of globalization and e-commerce. I think that we need to focus more on business models that are likely to stay in town, not because it's profitable, but because they're members of the community. So we do have a lot of worker-owned co-ops and other types of co-ops in Greenfield that are doing very well, and they're not likely to move to eBay or Amazon Prime because they're just invested in the community. And I'd like to see more growth like that.
Brickett, the economic development question, and how would you attract that to Greenfield?
So I believe the downtown should be geared towards retail and people coming to town to go to downtown to do multiple things together, eating food, entertainment, retail. I think we need to try to keep the service industry from being on the main street. We need to have places, we need to attract and draw people to stay downtown so they can continue to shop and shop in all the different shops that are there. To get that to happen, I have proposed that we have a group together between an economic development assistant to the mayor, which is a position that we have currently that is not being utilized to its fullest, and in coordination with the landlords, current business owners, some business owners that may have left for one reason or another, to talk about why we can't get the storefronts filled. We have 14 plus storefronts that are empty in Greenfield. We need to get those filled, and I think we need to fill them with the type of business that attracts people to the downtown and keeps them there.
All right, candidates, we're halfway through today's debate. We'll be back with more questions and answers for the candidates running for mayor of Greenfield after we take a short break. You're watching 22 News. Welcome back. You're watching a special Your Election Headquarters program right here on 22 News. And today we're hosting a debate among the candidates running for mayor of Greenfield. We will continue with our questions for the candidates right now. And the next question will go to Sheila Gilmour. Sheila, Greenfield is the commercial hub of Franklin County, and the proposed expansion of big box retail in Greenfield has been controversial over the years. Would you be willing to welcome a major big box retailer like a Walmart or a Target to Greenfield? Why or why not?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and people ask this pretty frequently. I don't see it happening. I know that the property that people were talking about having a big box is currently being leased by a private party who from what I understand, is not willing to allow something like that to be built nearby. It's something that has been fought since I was in middle school, and I don't think people are going to stop fighting it now. So I think that what we need to do is we need to focus on what we can do with that land, which would be valuable. And I think that looking at light industry might be, I think that as far as taxes go, that would increase our tax base more than having big box retail. But at the same time, we have a lot of working class people who are low income who live in Greenfield, who are traveling outside of the city to do their shopping. And we need to have something local for them.
Brickett, how do you feel about big box retailers?
Well, I've been on the council for 19 years, and at every chance to vote on this issue, I voted in favor of creating and allowing and making the ability for a large discount national retailer to locate in Greenfield. It has been stymied. It's an interesting question because you clearly follow what has been happening. As candidate said previous, we have a large population of people who need that type of place to go shopping. For people who have a car that can get in and they can drive to Hadley to go down to Target or Walmart, that's great. We have a very, very large population of people who don't have the ability to do that, and that is that's not fair for them to have to try to catch a bus or catch a ride to get down to shop. So I am 100% willing, able, and would like to see a national department store in Greenfield.
Roxann, your feeling about big box retailers?
Well, I was actually on the planning board when I was one of the 4 out of 5 people who voted to accept the permit to build the big box retail store there. After 9 months of hearings in which we achieved, well, if you look at the decision, it's 14 pages of mitigation that the developer will have to do. So I guess you could call that I'm a willing to. But we don't really know what's going to happen to that property afterwards because it is being leased by Stop and Shop, or the company that owns Stop and Shop, for reasons that we don't really fully understand or know at this time, although I would certainly want to get to the bottom of that. But I can see us tweaking the current zoning so that we can have broader uses, more mixed uses out there, and it still wouldn't affect their permit if they chose to go forward. So that we can do without welcoming them or without, regardless of whether they decide to build there or not.
All right, candidates, now you have 30 seconds to answer the next 2 questions, so we're going to move it along here quickly. And the next question first goes to Brickett. The opioid epidemic has hit Greenfield and other communities hard. What would you do as mayor in order to help the people in the community deal with opioid addiction?
Okay, this is a great question for 30 seconds. Anyway, the opioid addiction is a serious issue that we have, obviously. What we need to do is partner with our state and federal authorities, and not authorities, but our state and federal partners to be able to get to help with the situation. But the first thing we really have to do is focus on the underlying issues, one of which is affordability of living in the city of Greenfield. We need to make it affordable so that we can help lift those folks up who have an opioid addiction problem and help them instead of having an unaffordable place for them to live when they get out.
Roxann?
The Opioid Task Force, which exists in Greenfield, is a national model for how communities can address, and they were one of the first, they can address the opioid addiction problem, and they involve many of the local service agencies. There's something like 15 or 20 of them that work closely with them on the issue. So as mayor, I certainly wouldn't want to get in their way. They're doing a good job. But any way that we can support them through that process would be something that we would do under my administration.
Sheila, your feelings about helping people with opioid addiction?
Mm-hmm. So I think that Greenfield could be a stronger partner working with the Opioid Task Force and also some of the nonprofits and care providers who are in Greenfield. I think that we've taken a hands-off approach in the past. And I think for city government, it's our job to serve the people. And some of these people have substance use disorders, and we need to serve them as well.
Okay, next question is probably going to be the last question. We'll start off with Roxann. A homeless encampment on the Greenfield Town Common received a lot of attention back in 2017, and the death of 2 people in a tent en route to this past winter further focused attention on the issue of homelessness in the city. Is there anything more the city can be doing to help those who are homeless?
Both the deaths of the 2 people this winter and the encampment were very unfortunate situations that really didn't have to happen if we had been keeping our eye more closely on the ball and being more caring about how we provide housing to the homeless and services to the homeless as well, whether it's warming centers or otherwise. But there is a task force that was started this winter that is about to present some recommendations for how to handle homeless and affordable housing. And I propose that we make that a permanent mayoral appointed committee so that we can have those community people and organizations that have already looked at that to advise the mayor and to work with the service organizations such as the Salvation Army.
Sheila, what can be done to help the homeless in Greenfield?
I think there's a lot more that we could do. I feel like we have not done nearly enough. Last year, after that couple died behind McDonald's, I went out with our city council president and we helped move a couple younger folks. They were my son's age almost, just a little older. And we ended up moving them to another temporary location because they weren't going into an efficiency apartment. They just found another place to camp. And I think that it's a travesty that we're just allowing people to move from one temporary location to another when what we really need to do is build more affordable housing, and we need to get people the support that they need so that they can get into a permanent situation.
Brickett, how would you help the homeless as mayor?
So what happened with the encampment and with the deaths was just a travesty. I mean, that shouldn't happen. The issue, it's again underlying, it's affordability. Do we have places for people to go? Do we have places that people can afford to live in? There's any number of reasons why someone is homeless, and I won't profess to know all of them or any of them. But what I will say is we can work together as a community to try to make it more affordable so that we can bring people up and into a situation where they have a place to live. And that's what we need to do. And to do that, we had the Human Rights Commission, we had the police department, we had many agencies working to try to get folks into places to be, specifically in those very cold nights where the 2 died. But my time is up, but thank you.
You're right, it's not easy to answer this question in 30 seconds, but we do have time for one more question.
Oh.
And you have 30 seconds to answer.
have
So
talked
once again,
slower.
it's not easy. Okay, I think it's Sheila that gets this question first. Earlier this week, Greenfield School Committee approved a $23 million budget after a long discussion about how to fund the department. As mayor, how would you approach the issue of school funding?
I think that school funding needs to come from the state. I think that right now when you're funding schools with property taxes, lower income neighborhoods will have poorer outcomes for their students. And that's how poverty begets poverty. I think that we need to break that cycle by making sure that our funding is fair across the state so that Cambridge and Newton have, the same resources that we would have in Greenfield or here in Chicopee.
Brickett?
School funding is basically a disaster, but we as a city pour a lot of money into our schools, and what we need to do, and this was an idea proposed both by the current superintendent and the current mayor, is to do an audit of what we are spending on the school actual programs and how much of our money is going towards the school programs. We sufficiently fund. We fund about $32 million out of $51 million of our budget. So we need to, and I would be the first one to get that audit done so that we know what we're spending and how much we either need to spend more or where we need to move the resources with what we are spending to something else within the schools.
Roxann, how would you address the issue of school funding?
Well, as a member of the school committee, or the mayor is a member of the school committee, and as a member of the school committee, the mayor has the opportunity to create open lines of communication between the superintendent's office and the town office. And I'm not sure that those open lines of communication have been occurring of late. Hence, we've had some issues with getting the budget passed. So I would definitely use my position and my knowledge of being on the school committee before to keep those lines of communication open.
That's time, and now we move on to the closing statements. Once again, I'm going to throw you another curveball here. 30 seconds for your closing statement. Each candidate will have 30 seconds, and the order was determined by drawing. Brickett Allis, you go first.
Thank you, Rich. To the residents of Greenfield, I ask that on November 5th, you come to the polls and you think about whether you want Greenfield to go the same direction that we're going or go in a new direction. I ask for your vote, and I hope that you will see that the direction that I have been proposing and that I've been talking about consistently, which is focusing on the needs of Greenfield versus that which we just want, is what you can go with and get behind. So on November 5th, please write in Brickett Allis.
Sheila Gilmour, your closing statement, please.
Yes. I'm hoping to earn everybody's vote on November 5th. I am trying to bring in more transparency and accountability to Town Hall. I think that this is our town that we all live in. We all pay taxes here, and we all deserve to know what's going on. We also all deserve to have a seat at the table and a strong voice in our town government. I'm hoping that as mayor I can bring more people in and increase participation.
Roxann Wedegartner, your closing statement, please.
All right. On November 5th, you are going to get new leadership. One of us is going to be your mayor. I would like very much for that to be me. And I hope on November 5th that you see that I have the background, the experience, and the desire and the strength to be the next mayor of Greenfield. I ask for your vote on November 5th.
Okay, Candace, thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. The mayor's the candidates running for mayor of Greenfield. You can watch that again on wwlp.com. Tomorrow, it's the candidates running for mayor of Westfield. I'm Rich Tadamer. Have a good afternoon.